Invited speaker, Tracy Osborn. Tracy has a day job where she gets to write books and freelance and do all that stuff where she doesn't have to be in an office all day, which is really cool. She comes all the way to us today from Canada, but originally she's from California. And she would like to talk to us about stuff, and I invited her because I like to hear her talk about things. And she's going to be presenting a talk about how to do books and really cool 90s movies. Let's make her feel welcome.
Huh? Russ for the win. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. So as mentioned, I am Tracy. I'm lime daring on the internet, and I feel like I can't go backwards and change my username now because I've been using it for like 10 years, but it's often confused as Lime Darling, so I'm just going to put that out there. That's Lime Daring on the internet. You can find me on Twitter, Mastodon, SpeakerDeck, any kind of service everywhere. So as mentioned, I am a Californian. I say that on purpose instead of American. We'll just say that. I am a Californian who has, I moved to Canada about a couple of years ago, and I live in Toronto. So that has been a really fun change of pace. And I regret to say that there's not enough Clueless gifs in this presentation, even though I called it Clueless, but it's like the best movie ever. And this face kind of shows how I feel day to day, I guess. I have a tendency to jump into projects and do things. As mentioned, I don't have a job. I haven't really had a job for like the last 10 years. I like to build things on the internet, and I try to make money from them. And usually I start a project and throw myself into it, and then after I'm done, I look back on it and be like, wow, I had no idea that it was going to be like that, or it was going to take that long, or it was going to cost that much. But it's been fun. So the projects I work on, you may have seen my books, which I have a few here with me. This is Hello Web App. Hello Web App is my, the yellow book was the first book I've ever written, and it's an introduction to Django. But it's actually, I said that wrong. It's an introduction to building web apps with Django. It doesn't really teach what Django is, but it helps people build a web app. And then the book behind that is the follow-up called Intermediate Concepts. And you might have seen my presentation on, what day is it? Friday at PyConAU on design for non-designers. So this is a talk I was giving that I turned into a book, and now I'm giving a talk again with the book together. And those are my books. And recently I've started playing around with making zines, little printables. And unfortunately, before coming to this conference, I went to a printer and very professionally paid money to get them nicely printed and bound so I can bring to this conference. And then I got on the plane and I realized that I left the box at the printer. So, but they're free and they're available to be printed online. You can just, all the files are there. You can just, I think it's 12 regular sheets of paper that then you just fold in half and staple, and then you have your own little command line intro. So I'm experimenting with making these little free zines and books and whatnot to get people into programming. I'm going to work on a Git one next. I'm actually looking for people who help sponsor, in case that's a thing you might be interested in helping out with. Last but not least, for the last 9 years, I've been running this website called Wedding Lovely. And kind of go into how Wedding Lovely started, because that's a very key part of my background. But that's kind of another place that I've been working on things. So just give you a little bit of an overview so you know what you're getting into with this talk. I kind of just want to go over my background because it's a little unusual, and I feel like there's a lot of lessons that I've learned and a lot of lessons I think that would be really useful to people in this audience about how I made it here, because I didn't come into the Python world on a traditional path. Then again, who does? And just for fun, I like to build products, and even though this is not going to be really like a big, here's how to program, or here's cool code snippets. But building a product, especially a product that's for programmers, was really, really fun. So I have some of the process that led to my first book being produced and released for our Django world. So what's the point of all this? The point is that for me, being a designer, developer, entrepreneur, marketer, whatnot, I think it's really fun. Writing tutorials and teaching people how to pick up Django or teaching people how to do design has been really fun. And making a physical product is fun. You know, we all work on computers and we work on the web. And sometimes, you know, just working digitally, the process of building something that, you know, you can come to some place and be like, look what I made, has been really fun. So I'm going to start out a little bit on my background and kind of how I got to this point of being on stage here. So I'm a country girl. I moved a lot as a kid, but I grew up in Northern California, and my dad is a literal cowboy, which is like kind of awesome. That is me. That's when I was cute. Seriously, right? No, okay. So I grew up in the mountains, and now I'm actually a really outdoorsy person. I like to hike and backpack. And you guys follow Jacob Kaplan-Moss right now. He's my idol because he is hiking the PCT, and I'm just like, why am I not there with him? But I like to be outdoors, and a lot of that's because I grew up in the mountains. But when I was a kid, I did not actually spend much time outdoors. I spent all of my time on a computer. And I was very lucky. I was born in 1984. Very lucky, in my entirety of my life, I've had a computer. You know, even way back then when you had the giant floppies and all that jazz, because I was lucky enough to have a couple of family members who worked in tech. So this is my grandfather. My grandfather worked at IBM. Oh, I should look up these dates. Something like the 40s to the 90s. He worked at IBM for his entire life. This is a little bittersweet. He actually passed away a week ago, age 96. Which is, you know, kind of amazing. So my grandfather would be really proud of myself if he knew that I was up here on stage showcasing him in his awesome I love my IBM personal computer shirt. I have so much IBM gear, it's crazy. But he was always on the forefront of technology. He made sure that all of his grandkids got a computer when they graduated high school. I always had he gave me my first 14.4K modem, which was amazing. Remember those days? So I was really lucky to have my grandfather, and he was one of the people, along with another family member, that got me onto computers way earlier than most people did. So when I was in high school, this is say 1998 through 2002, people weren't, the web was becoming a thing, and people were starting to do things on the web, and I had the modem, and a lot of people did. But I went through high school basically building websites. I taught myself HTML, and I used that to get A's in all my classes, because the teachers didn't know that you could. Basically, the teacher would give me a report, and I would just report. I would just make a website, and I'd put it on the internet, and I'd show the teacher, and they'd be like, mind blown, instant A. I just got through high school this way. And I'm going to make fun of myself for a second, because one of my high school websites is still up. Look at that amazingness. Look how the web used to be. Frame-based, I was really into fantasy novels, still am. It was kind of a dedication to Terry Brooks. Those buttons was like this online button maker where you can put your text in and output these buttons. I'm glad I put it on AngelFire instead of GeoCities. Now you can find it, because GeoCities is gone, so that was a bit of foresight on my end. And if you can't read it, this site consists of Terry Brooks, the best author I've ever seen in a long time, sort of pathetic Java games, fan fiction and short stories, and works of art. Not to mention a message board and a chat room for all of you to enjoy, because that's how you did websites back then. You went out and you got a little Java widget and you put it in a chat room on your website. It's hilarious. So yeah, you can go ahead and find that and make fun of me. Luckily, most of my short story links are broken, because those were all emo short stories from high school. All right, so I thought I was hot stuff in high school. I was building websites, and none of my other friends were. And I thought, oh, I love computers. This naturally, I'm going to go into school for computer science. So I got into Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. It's a university in the Central Coast of California, and it's actually a pretty well-known university for computer science for the West Coast of the United States. So I was very lucky to be accepted into this program. And here came along Computer Science 101. Now this was literally day one, hour one of university for me. The first class I ever took, the first class that morning. And I sat down in class excited about my university experience, like, boom, I'm gonna learn some knowledge. And like 5 minutes in, this was my face. The teacher started going on and on about things, and I don't remember exactly what he was saying, but I was like, did I miss something? Was I supposed to take a different class? Was there a summer class that I missed? What happened? Like, why? And everyone else is just like, yeah. And I'm like, why is no one else freaking out? So I went and I found the professor after class, and I was like, okay, what's going on? I don't know anything you just said. Like, am I in the wrong class? And he's like, oh, no, it'll be fine, it'll get better. And it didn't really. For me, a lot of the problem was that the school was teaching Java as the introduction to programming. And not to disparage other languages, but Java, for me, to learn, was particularly hard. Cal Poly is a quarter-based system, so you have three quarters per typical year, and then a summer quarter. So the 1 and 2, the winter class, we started working with GUIs, and that was the one where I was like, oh, cool, I can actually start doing this, because having my HTML background, a frame-based HTML background of, you can see things, and then having a GUI where I press a button and that would do things. And I was like, oh, cool, I can do this. I'm starting to understand this. And then spring came along with Computer Science 103. Now, this was the class that dealt with theory. And a lot of the class was like sorting algorithms and reverse engineering them. So you had to write a paper about exactly why this one was better than this one with graphs and all this kind of jazz. And like my face just multiplied, and I was having such a hard time with this class. So there was a project in this class, and I was struggling. And the project had one of those things where it was 20% for this part of the project and 10% for this part of the project. So as you do, you look at the things that are worth the most, and you prioritize those. And when I turned in my project and eventually got it back graded, the teacher sent it back, and he'd used a different rubric for grading the project. So what do you do in that situation? Of course, you email the professor, and you say, hey, you used a different project rubric that you said. Can I get the other one? Can I get the grade? Because my grade would go up. And the professor emailed me back saying that he would do that for me. But then he went on a gigantic rant saying how lazy I was, and how I was just trying to skate through computer science, and that I wasn't applying myself, and I needed to actually study. And it still makes me mad. And having this email, having this professor just say very clearly that he did not believe in me, and I was going to study groups, I had a tutor, I was trying my best to get through computer science, and have this professor just tell me point blank that he didn't think I belonged. I then agreed, and that was the moment that I decided to quit computer science. Yeah, I got to bring that up. That was my face. So I quit computer science. I immediately started the process to switch my major, and I turned around, did 180, and I did the exact opposite. I went into art. Also because art was one of the only majors that would accept me at the grade level that I was at, which was kind of funny. But I did art, and I had done art in high school. I really like art. I was, especially doing websites, felt like graphic design was a good place for me to land. And I was done with computers. You still have to use computers for graphic design, but I was not going to do websites or programming or anything ever again. I was going to be a product designer and make wine labels. Not kidding. Sorry about the noise. So I ended up back in the web world because I went, there was a friend of mine who was hiring for a startup down the street, literally in a garage down the street from where I went to university, and he needed a designer for his thing and a front-end developer, and I needed a job. So I ended up working with a couple dudes in the garage when that actually turned into a job I had for 4.5 years. working as their designer and front-end developer. But the funny thing about being a front-end developer is that normally front-end developers deal with JavaScript. And I was so traumatized from my period of time in Java that I know that Java and JavaScript are not the same things, but mere fact that Java was in the name and has these like really scary curly braces, I refused to do any JavaScript at this company. So I was a front-end developer doing HTML and CSS, doing all the design, and then they had this special person that assists me for JavaScript. So at the time, it kind of felt like that experience I had in computer science was wasted time. I took 5 years to graduate instead of the typical 4 for the area. But looking back on that time, that experience taught me a lot. And having that background in both, like that little bit of background in computer science, and then having my degree in design has actually been a huge benefit to my career. And I got this direct experience with learning styles for programming, knowing that there's probably other people out there like me who can love programming and love Python and all that kind of jazz, but have a different way of learning or prefer a different way of learning. So moving on, I'm just going to skip over the startup years a little, or excuse me, the time I worked at that company. And this is the point in my life that Python came into play. I love you, Python. So I actually did the keynote at DjangoCon US last year, and I talked about working at this company that I worked at. It's a really fun story, and so I'm really proud of this keynote. So I'm not going to give that story again, but I highly recommend checking out this other keynote I did at DjangoCon, and it's about anxiety. I suffer from anxiety, and it's a whole fun little story. So skipping over that startup, I moved to the Bay Area of California, Silicon Valley. Everyone and their mother had a startup, and of course, I wanted one too, because that's what you do when you live in Silicon Valley. So I got in my head that I wanted to launch my own startup. And again, terrified of programming, I wrote this blog post. It's the fun thing about the internet is like all these like things of your past can just stay up forever, like my high school website and this like kind of dorky blog post I did about trying to find a technical co-founder, because I wasn't going to be programming. I wanted someone to do it for me, because again, still hate programming, still traumatized from that experience in university. But this didn't work. It's really hard to just find someone on the internet to be your technical co-founder. So long story short, I was left with this decision of, I really want to launch this. I can't find someone to do it for me, because turns out that's not a really good thing to do. So do I just quit? Or do I finally learn how to program? And that was the point of time where my husband, who works in Python, was like, let me introduce you to Django. Yay, Django. So Django's like much maligned like to other people. They're the magic in Django. Some people like to complain about, oh, it glosses over too much, or it makes things too simple, or you don't see what things going on in the background. That was perfect for me. I don't want to know how it's working. I want to know that it is working, but I don't need to know how. And so Django was awesome for me as someone who was terrified of, not really terrified, but like who didn't want to just like stress out about the code quality. I just wanted to get something up and out in front of customers and start working with people. And Django was there for me. So I built this website called Wedding Invite Love. And I wrote this blog post, which is still up as well. And when I say learn Django, I don't really mean learn Django. I mean like punch Django enough that it like formatted a website that I can have customers on. And speaking of the internet having things that you're embarrassed about, this is my first conference talk ever was at DjangoCon, 2011. And it's me telling this story of learning Django. So here's a code snippet. So now, today, I can look at this and I'm like, it is really obvious to me now with the experience I've had over the last 10 years of how to make this way more efficient. But here's the thing. Oh, and here's another one. I didn't know how to work with multiple models, so I just like threw everything under one giant profile model for these profiles. the thing is that one of the things about working with beginners, I try to emphasize that you don't have to make things perfect to begin with. You can have things like this. And the people who are customers for your eventual web app aren't going to see this. And at this time, I was writing stuff like this because I was less than 1 year into my journey of programming, and I was just trying to get features out as fast as possible. And in the meanwhile, I'm building this startup, and I ended up getting to this program called Designer Fund in the Bay Area, which then got me into the accelerator batch at 500 Startups, which is like Y Combinator, but a little bit different. And I was building an actual startup and getting, I got investment into my startup at this time with code like this. I try to emphasize that, barring security issues, here's me at a fair, barring security issues, that ugly code can be okay. Oh, another fun thing is that, so a little bit of background on Wedding Lovely, that there's individual websites. So there's Wedding Invite Love that showcases invitation designers, and there's Wedding Planner Love that showcases planners, and Wedding Photo Love, you get the point. And at the time, I didn't know how to, when I had my first one, I wanted to build a second one. I didn't know how to make Django make two separate websites and have having a bubble between these two different types of profiles. So what I did is I took my entire Django project and just copy pasted it. And then I did another one, I copy pasted it. And I had 5 separate projects with duplicated code across all 5 of them. So I wanted to do a new feature, I had to copy paste it between each and every one of these different projects. And yes, I had employees, and I was getting investment money. And it was getting to the point where it was starting to get annoying. But at that point, then I knew enough from building this company, I had learned enough at this point, that then I was able to go through and refactor and make things better. So inefficient code, I will fight anyone about this. Inefficient code is okay, as long as there's no security issues, of course. It is okay. And a lot of beginners get tripped up on this, looking at their code and being like, this is ugly, or someone's going to hate my code or whatnot. And you too can build a startup, and no one can know, and you can just learn enough to fix it later. And this is the point where I realized that learn by doing, which incidentally is the motto of my university. Learn by doing is it's such a better process for me to learn programming. I didn't know, I tried to learn programming and doing a lot of theory and a lot of nitpicking over code quality and algorithms and all that, blah, blah, blah. But having a real project where I could, I said, okay, I wanted to do this, and now I want to add payments. And so, okay, I have to figure out PayPal, and Stripe, yay, and learn how to do just enough Django and Python to make those things work. And then as I went along, I learned, and I became a better programmer by working on something. And that was another really, really key thing for me. And then for me, working on a startup was really, that's when I discovered that I like doing this, not a real job. I want to do something different every single day, and sometimes it's really stressful. And I have not made a lot of money in the last 10 years, but it was like a really eye-opening moment of the kind of job I wanted to have. And I want to go back to the professor at this point and be like, look at me now. You thought I couldn't hack it, and I am out here doing a talk on stage at a programming conference in Australia. All right, so I'm gonna, right? That's naturally what you do. So I worked on Wedding Lovely. I've been running Wedding Lovely for like 9 years. It's not been not a rocket ship. It's not been always up and to the right. I gained a co-founder quit, I've had employees, I have laid off lots of employees. There's been a lot of problems in the company. There's been a lot of good things in the company, but in general, there's been a lot of lows. And during one of these lows, I started looking out for something new to do, something to keep myself from just sobbing into my blankets. And this experience with the university that combined with teaching myself Django and a little bit of Python led to a few aha moments in my head. And when I taught myself Django, I used a lot of really awesome tutorials out there, but after I did the tutorial and after I learned what I needed to learn, I then looked back on that being like, you know what, I think this could be taught better. And that's when I started thinking maybe I should be the person to, maybe I should be that person to teach it in a different way. So there wasn't any Django tutorials that had a customizable tutorial. So Hello Web App, I teach building a collection of things. And I wanted that because instead of, say, building a polling app or building a blog or whatnot, I wanted to teach something that someone could customize. So a collection of things can be altered to be like, a blog is a collection of posts. A Twitter clone is a collection of small snippets of text. An Instagram clone is a collection of images. So I wanted to build a tutorial that someone could easily alter to build something unique to them, and therefore, hopefully, that information will stick more because they're building something that they care about themselves. I wanted something that was more project-based than theory-based. So early on when I said Hello Web App teaches you Django, and then I had to revise that, because I'm trying to be very clear is I do not teach Python or Django. I don't teach how to code. I teach how to build a web app. And my hope is by teaching someone how to build a web app, we'll get them to that moment of a success where they can see people using what they've built. They can see people on the internet trying out the things that they built. And then they'll be like, cool, now how does it actually work? And then they can go through and learn that theory and learn what's going on in the background. I also wanted a book that didn't assume a background in programming, so no references to typical programming concepts you would know if you knew another language. And I wanted something that was small. There's a lot of introduction to programming books by publishers. They want to have a giant book. So someone's like, I want to learn this. And they're like, here you go. I wanted something, which I succeeded in, that was just like that, that you can build a full-on web app and launch in Heroku in a very small book. And I wanted to look pretty because I'm a designer, and I had that background in graphic design. And programming books are not very pretty. So I could have just written a tutorial and put it in my blog. But at the time, I think I was reading Tim Ferriss, and there was all these people like Nathan Barry that were writing books, and they're like, I made $1 million by writing this book. And I'm like, cool, I want to do that too. Spoiler, I have not done that. But I was like, you know what? How about I like building projects. I built Wedding Lovely from scratch. So how about just go through and do a whole book by scratch? So I've been very inspired by A Book Apart. And I self-publish my books. But at the time, I was like, maybe I'll look into self-publishing, but maybe I'll talk to a publisher just in case. And of course, I was being in love with A Book Apart then and now. I went to Book Apart and emailed them being like, hey, I have this idea, Django for designers. And the person was very nice, and they said, hey, it looks like an excellent book, and I'm confident you'll do a fantastic job, but it is not for us. They say the introduction to Django is just too big of a topic for our small scope of books. No, it's not exactly the size of their books. Actually, when I finished writing Hello Web App, and I was like, because I couldn't really convince them, like, no, really, my book's gonna be small. I went back to them after I finished writing it, being like, hey, me again, wrote a small book. Maybe you'll want it now? And they're like, no. That time they were like less polite. They're just like, we're not interested, go away. And I looked at other publishers. No Starch Press accepted my book idea. And that was really awesome. So thank you, No Starch Press. And then I had to go ahead and tell them no. Sorry, guys. They are very clear about they have very nice royalty rates. And they put this on their website. Everyone gets the same thing. And if you don't know what royalties are, royalties in advance. So an advance is literally an advance in your earnings. So if I did a 10% royalty on $8,000 advance, it means I would get $8,000 at the start of working with the publisher, and that can help fund me writing the book. And then when the book is released, at the point, I would get 10% of every book sale, but I'd only start getting money after I had get 10%, enough money to get to $8,000. So I would, they would keep that first $8,000, and then I would get money afterwards. So I can advance my earnings. So it's complicated, and at this point, I was kind of like, why not 100% of the royalties? I don't really want 10%, I want 100%. And I knew that would take a lot more effort, but you know what? I built this startup, I learned things from scratch. It's really fun to build things and learn. So you know what? I'm just gonna try to self-publish. Because I can always go back and work with a publisher later. So yeah, let's fundraise. This is something I definitely threw myself into without having any idea about how much work it would be, trying to fundraise and write and produce a book, not to mention a physical book, not just an ebook. Thankfully, something like Kickstarter exists. And Kickstarter kind of helped me build an advance for my book. I could, create a video and put it up there, this idea, and hopefully raise enough money. That would be my advance, but I'd still keep 100% of the royalties. And this is around PyCon 2014. So in PyCon, I released the Kickstarter right before PyCon, and I went to PyCon. Noah's here, actually. I was talking to him earlier, because he was one of the people in PyCon being like, hi, you know me, I'm Tracy. Guess what? I'm doing this Kickstarter. Please share, please donate. And I just bugged people all over the conference in person. #hustle. That was a good idea, though. I was glad to talk to a lot of really awesome people in Python, and people were super supportive about me. And I managed to raise, this got cut off because Kickstarter changed the way that it looks. But I raised 12,000 US when my goal, I think, was 7, which is awesome. So I had the support of the community behind me, and I got this advance. And then it was time to actually make a book. Oh. Let's watch my Kickstarter video, which is kind of, so the Kickstarter videos always have an outtakes at the end, because I think that's really fun. And Kickstarter gives me analytics, and I can see that 75% of the people who watch my video don't make it to the outtakes, which makes me so sad, because the outtakes are hilarious, in my opinion. So I decided to see if I can make it work here, and just show you my outtakes. Maybe. Why aren't you working?
I don't know what to say.
Brain's going, ah! Best book ever! A care package of cookies. Of baked goods or cookies in a care package. A box of fish. Microphone. Bacon pancakes. Most people don't see those. It makes me really sad, because it just shows kind of how, oh my God, making those videos is the worst thing in the world. When you point a camera at me, I've gotten a lot better, the camera here, but I tend to dissolve into this goo of awkwardness. And it's fun to have those little outtakes at the end, because it kind of showcases how it takes multiple days to get things done. So I was really happy at the time. This is a big lesson learned for me, for going to PyCon and aiming things and talking to people in person. Because as a product person, I would much rather not do marketing. I don't want to deal with that. And that's been a huge lesson to me as someone who just wants to build things, is that I have to keep marketing in mind. And this applies to anyone out there who, not even if you don't have a physical product or you're working on a company, but even if you're launching something, an open source project, you still got to keep marketing in mind. And so this is one of those big lesson learned periods of my life about being able to promote something to other programmers. And friends are awesome. And I should have put on here the Python community has been really awesome and supportive of everything I've done. And it's really nice that I was able to, I joke that Kickstarter is the way of it's how you can con your friends into giving you money. I love you all. And friends have been really awesome and supportive and throwing me money to help me get these books out. I've now done 4 Kickstarters. So at this point, I need to make the book. Kind of what I wanted to do. So here's the thing. On my Kickstarter, I put my estimated delivery for the books as July 2014. The book actually came out in May 2015. That was a big, big gap in my, oh yeah, sure, I'll have the book out at this point, until the point I actually got the book out. Because holy moly, it took way longer, I guess, to build a book than I thought. I just want to showcase here, I ended up just using Google Docs to do all of the writing for my books. After trying out a bunch of different services, I tried Markdown, I tried different writing services, I tried for all the ones I've tried. But simplicity turned out to be better, and I started just writing in Markdown, and then I was able to bring in people on these chapters. And what I did with Hello Web App is I would constantly get people emailing me, say 6 months after my estimated due date, and they would be like, I paid you money, and I don't have anything. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's taking longer than I expected. And so then I would send them over to my drafts, and people would go, they would actually go through and help me edit before the book was out. And props to Google Docs for doing that, for being around. So in this huge writing period of doing Hello Web App, keep it simple. Like it was, after I spent some time futzing around with different writing services, just starting with Google Docs and just writing it there and dealing with the output later meant I could write faster. And by golly, when launching things that other people are waiting on, please don't do what I did and build a bigger buffer. Give yourself more time to launch something, because things always take longer than you expect. Now, when it comes to making the book, I ended up, I know that some other people who've written books in the Python Django community will use something like LaTeX or whatnot. I just went straight to my graphic design degree and did everything in InDesign. And this allowed me to go line by line in my books and kind of combine this programming whatnot background that I had with my arty background. And it was like this perfect little combination of these two sides of me. I want to give a shout out to anyone who wants to do this, is that the nice thing about the internet is that there's videos on everything. And so if you ever were considering, I find editorial design and working with InDesign really, really fun, because you can do all this nitpicking or typography. And there's things like YouTube and Skillshare that teach you how to do it. So at this time, I had this background in editorial design from university, but I had to go through Skillshare and relearn everything, because it's been 10 years since I graduated. And why not this? I would have to learn. I've heard a lot of horror stories about that, and I did not want to touch it. And I just wanted to point out, I literally went line by line in the books to make things look better, or maybe look worse but work better. In this case, the apply all migrations line there, I have it all squished together. And that's because it would go over into 2 lines. And so I did that so that it would go into 1 line, so it looks a little uglier, but it would work better for the output in the books, which it doesn't really work for ebooks. I can go in a whole other presentation about that. But essentially, I could go through the book and make things look nice in InDesign in a very visual way. And one of the things I did in the beginning of the book, I wanted to have something that said right from the get-go that this book does not take itself seriously. So not only does my dedication have a word that does not exist, which is porpoise, I even talk about my dog peeing my bed, because I was writing the dedication, and that's literally what my dog did. My dog just went on my bed, and she was getting old and decided to just go, pfft. And I was like, Molly, I want to be happy and tell you what a good dog you are, but I'm really mad at you, and I'm just going to put this into writing. So anyone who opens up Hello Web App, I hope that they'll get to that first page and be like, programming, that can be kind of scary. And they get to this, and they're like, this book is going to be really dorky. And it is. And you know what? Publisher, I don't think, would let me do that. So that was another advantage for self-publishing. So writing Hello Web App this is where my art background, my graphic design degree, combined perfectly with my techie side. With all that experience I had in university of trying to teach myself how to code, with my experience of teaching myself to code with Django to launch Wedding Lovely, and all the lessons I learned from that period of time in my life, being able to combine my art and programming sides, and that's really, really awesome. And I want to talk just a quick little note about programmers and art. One of the things I love to think about with writing the books is trying to combine technical perfection, mathematical perfection. As a programmer, when programmers are learning how to design, something that trips them up is then you have to learn that mathematical perfection does not necessarily mean visual perfection. So even if things are even in the code does not necessarily mean that they look correct. So just for a quick example, there's this blog post that's on 24A's that talks about this, how that left example of double dagger, that's all the same color, but it looks, the thinner font at the bottom in that line, because there's less color there, will look lighter. And if you want everything to look the same color, you have to darken those things that are lighter. And so visually, they'll look the same, but technically, they are different colors. And those are the things that like super fascinate me about art. And it's hard for programmers, I think, when they're working with, we were trying to come to design, is trying to reconcile the fact that something can be like even and the same color, but visually is not. Like there's this thing with art and frames and matting, where when you mat a piece of art, the bottom mat needs to be a little bit wider than the rest of it. It's a little bit not, everything can be even except for the bottom, needs to be weighted a little bit more. And that's just like a visual trick, because if it's not weighted, then it will look actually too thin, even though it's the exact same size all the way around. You know, and then kerning itself, when you're trying to push the letters, or the letters can be technically spaced out perfectly, but visually they aren't. So kerning is the process of like moving the letters together so they visually look like they're evenly spaced when they're not. So these are the things that are really fascinating to me. One of the reasons why I work with in designing these visual tools as a way of combining these like visual inconsistencies and making them work with programming. So this is kind of just a little side note, something I think about a lot. And if you're a programmer learning how to design, this whole world of dealing with like visual illusions has been I find really fascinating. So are paperback books worth it? I wanted to put this out because these were such a pain to make, and I had to gloss over a lot of things, and trying to ship them and trying to produce them and bringing them here and shipping here. It's been, sometimes I wonder if it would be better if I just did all digital, but hopefully everyone here will understand that coming here and being like, I have a book, and be able to hold something up in hand is worth it. Actually having a physical product is worth it. Now I just wanted one more little story about this process has been fulfillment, which has been, this is where the physical books, it becomes a big pain in the butt because, oh my gosh, trying to pack and ship and whatnot books have been a big pain. So this is me after doing the Kickstarter, the first Kickstarter. And why is shipping so hard? Especially, I mean, everyone here, if you live in Australia, I am so sorry, because I know firsthand how expensive it is to get books here. Because I've had people emailing me being like, hey, I wanted to buy your book, and then I went to check out, and the shipping literally is the cost of the entire book, like is in addition to the entire book. I'm sorry, it's what they do to me. I wish I could not, But I actually have a programming lesson learned in this point. Back in the day, when I did my first Kickstarter, I did everything manually for my labels when I was doing shipping. So I had to go for the United States Postal Service, went onto their website, and one by one, I copy and pasted all my Kickstarter addresses in, and I made labels. And I had to do this in 2 different websites because for within US addresses, there is a service called Media Mail that gives you cheaper shipping within the US for books. But of course, the United States Postal Service has a partnership with PayPal, and PayPal is the only one you can get media mail labels from, and I hate PayPal. But I had to create all these labels. I had to copy paste them to USPS website, I had to copy paste them into the PayPal website, and it was a gigantic pain in the butt. Isn't there a better way? There is. And it took me so long to get to this point because for some reason, even though I'd been building web apps and working with Django, I completely forgot about the fact that you can make a script and there's APIs out there. So then like a year and a half later of me doing all this manually, my husband finally was just like, you need to stop and let's figure out a better way of doing this. And there is this thing called Easy Post. And by the way, Easy Post works with Australia Post API. And again, I build web apps with Django, and I guess this is one of the criticisms that people who work with Django, is that you kind of forget that you can program with it. But I made my little Easy Post label creation script where I can just take a CSV and it outputs the labels I need. And I wish I did this way earlier, but at least I have it now. This is something I did years after learning how to program and building this startup and learning a little bit of Django. And so I've sometimes talk about not being a real programmer. And then I turn around and say, I am a programmer. I am a programmer that thinks a little bit differently. I'm a programmer that thinks a little more visually, and I kind of forget about these script things. But it took me a while to get into the mindset of that there are APIs and scripts and whatnot out there that can help me. So I'm going to wrap up here. I have a lot more stories about the process of building a book. And if you have any ideas or a tutorial or a way to talk to, if you want to write something to help educate other people in your community and you want to help with that, please ask me, because I have so many stories and anecdotes and things to share that I've learned. But essentially, I've written 2 other books, and I've done 4 Kickstarters because I had to do a whole new Kickstarter for Hello Web App because Django changed, and I had to re-release the book, of course. But just because I shared the outtakes from the first video, I'm going to go ahead and do that for here. Please share, please donate, and thank you so much for watching my video. Stay classy, San Diego. I didn't say that right. Stay classy. Just like, did you know? There's the Valley Girl, just came right out there. And then the last one is for design. Thanks for watching, and thank you for your support.
That sounded really good.
Yeah.
I like the end part.
Yeah.
Let's do it one more time.
Yeah. And learning a little about design. Including Mozilla's View Source, Amazon's.
You sound okay.
A dear friend from high school has done all of my videos for me, and she has been very patient with me for all of, the dorkiness and everything I bring to doing these videos. All right, in a nutshell, this has been a very me-based talk, but I hope that there's been some lessons learned of building products, and hopefully I can inspire you to if you wanted to build a product, or you wanted to write a book, or you wanted to do a tutorial to teach people how to program, hopefully this inspired you to do kind of the same thing. And again, please send me emails. I will send you all the information I have, because this has been a really fun process to me, and I want to share everything I've learned. I'm proud of this journey. I'm really proud that I have written these books, and I've helped thousands of people around the world learn how to do Django or learn how to design with my books. And it's all because of these earlier experiences I had in my career. That failed experience in computer science and switching majors into art and learning how to do Django. And all of this is tied right into this experience I had with building Hello Web App. Being able to come to a conference like this and people I don't know in Australia come up to me and they say, hey, I have your book. That is so cool. It is so cool. So if you've thought about building a product or writing something to help others, let me tell you is that feeling does not get old. It's been so awesome to have written something to support the community. And I'm kind of trying to see if I can make this into my full-time job. So, just a little bit about what's moving forward. You might see me, I'm looking into maybe publishing books for others, becoming a little programmer side of, a book apart, but for programmers or something. I still idolize them. I'm going to get a cease and desist from them soon, I'm sure. But I might start making this my full-time job. But this has been a really fun experience. And a lot of it's because of the Python and Django community and how much they've supported me in this journey and helped me out with building these books. So again, if you want to build a product, if you want to write a book, you want to know about running workshops or tutorials or any kind of jazz, please email me. Please tweet me or Mastodon or anything like that. I'm happy to help out. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. That was delightful. We have some presents.
Yay!
Yay!
Presents!
And we have a nice person that wants to take a photo over here. So do the thing with that thing. Yay! Yay! Done.
Yay!
Let's thank Tracy one more time.